Hi guys, welcome to Page of the Call. My name is Stephen Dawes and today I am discussing the game against Man City. Now, obviously, this was a game that I wasn't putting a lot of hope in. I wasn't really expecting us to get a huge amount from this game because obviously I know how we've been playing lately. I know how Manchester City have been playing lately, and so I didn't really put a lot of hope in this game. But I'm gonna go through that a little bit in a little moment. First of all, the teams, and we had Eze. Obviously, we had Doucouré out with a suspension. James McArthur and Will Hughes were both ill, so they didn't make the squad either. So we were a little bit threadbare in the middle, and Patrick Vieira decided to bring in Luca and Schlupp in place of Doucouré and Eze. Now I have to say I was a little bit concerned about bringing Luca in for a number of reasons, and I'll go into those again at the end. But that was the setup that he wanted. Apart from that, it was exactly the same. Well, you had AU up front technically, but it was really Zaha that was doing most of the front running. To be fair, and so it was a team that apart from Luca, I was a little bit concerned about. But apart from that, I thought it was okay. It's a decent team, and when I was expecting there to be um, a lot more from Manchester City than there actually was. Now, maybe it's because we did a good job of keeping them under control, and there are times when we did. But I think a lot of it was the fact that they perhaps didn't quite take the chances that they had, and they had a couple of clear-cut chances that they didn't take. So I think it was a little bit of one and the other. Part of it was our defence, which has been very good this season. You've got some very good defenders in the back there, and for the most of the game, I think they played incredibly well, worked really hard. The rest of the team came back and tracked back, but of course, that meant that for most of the game, Manchester City had the lion's share of the possession. And although a couple of times we did go forward and try to get them on the break and try to create things, we had a couple of corners here and there as well. For the most part, it was Manchester City controlling the game. They had us pinned back most of the time in our half of the pitch, which isn't very interesting to look at, and it isn't very encouraging to look at. But we were quite resilient, and I think that if what happened for the goal hadn't happened, I think it probably would have ended up a draw because I thought that we were quite resilient in the way that we were defending. Sometimes the defending was a little bit desperate, but for the most part, I thought that we handled most of the things they threw at us quite well. Gaeta had to make a couple of very good saves as well, which obviously helped the situation. But I thought in general we didn't do too badly in the terms of defending the game. But of course, it's the front part that caused us a little bit of issue again, because when we were getting the ball, we were trying to loop it over to Zaha, who most of the time was being well marked and couldn't get on the end of it, couldn't really make anything happen. He had one, perhaps you could say, decent half chance in the game, but for the most part, he was chasing his tail and chasing the ball, and he was being marked out of the game. So it was a bit of a frustration for him. And there were lots of times when we had the ball, we would get the ball into possession, and we would just hoof it forward, or we would hoof it up the line to try and get some pressure off the back four, which is fine. But if you keep doing that, then what's going to happen is it's going to come straight back at you again, which happened a lot of the time. To be fair, now there are a lot of people on Twitter who likened this to Roy Ball, to the Roy Hodgson time when he was a manager, and I would have to say that you're probably right. It was very much similar to the way that Roy Hodgson set up the team. My concern is that I defended Roy Hodgson at the time because we had an old squad. We had one of the oldest squads, average age squads in the Premier League. And so I think it was his job, and I still believe this. I believe it was his job to keep us in the Premier League until we could rebuild the team. Now, of course, he did that, and he did that very well. I mean, there were, the last couple of seasons we managed to get enough points to stay up well before the end of the season. Well, not well before, but with quite a few games to go. It wasn't going down to the wire. So I actually felt that he did a good job of keeping us up in the Premier League. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't goal scoring frenzy, but it was enough to keep us in the Premier League. But of course now it's changed. Now we've got Vieira, we've got a much younger side, the majority of the positions anyway, and so we should be trying to take the game to teams. And last season we did. We took the game to the team, and we were pushing forward, we were passing, we were on the front foot a lot of the time when we had the ball. And I realise that we have personnel then that we don't have now. But we have players in the team who can do that. You have Eze, Elise, Zaha. They can pass the ball forward, but they can also run with the ball, and they can take on players, and I think that there isn't quite enough of that running with the ball, running at defenders, keeping them on the back foot, making them, second guess where you're going to go and what's going to happen. I think that, Zaha does that to some extent, but Eze and Elise don't really do it so much, and I think part of that is because they have this, expectation they have to sit back, the expectation they have to defend, they have to track back, they have to keep the ball, they have to get the ball off the opposition, and so they're not really given the free rein to go forward and create something, which is a bit of a shame, because when Eze came on later on in the second half, Edouard also came on, I thought we played a lot better. I thought that we actually, you could see that Eze was trying to feed through to Zaha more often, which didn't really happen before he was on the pitch. He was trying to feed Zaha in more often than not, and I think that's the way we needed to go, to take the game a little bit more to Manchester City, to make them think, well, this isn't going to be an easy game, we need to defend as well as just attack. But anyway, on to Luka. My issue with Luka is just the fact that he is, I know he's an older player, but he's lost his form. He really has lost his form, and he's not fit. He hasn't played for a long time. He's not match fit, and you could see that by the end of the first half, he was really struggling. He got a very early, well, not very early, but he got a fairly early yellow card for a bad tackle, and there was a couple of times there when I thought he was going to get a second yellow with some of the tackles and that was going in. So I don't think it was the right decision, but of course you have to understand that he was Patrick Vieira was a little bit thin on the ground in terms of midfielders, but there were options in there. I think Ahamada perhaps should have started the game. I think Lokonga had a good game. I thought he worked really hard and tried to get players into positions as best he could. He was tracking back, he was tackling back. I think obviously we missed Doucouré, we did miss him, but and Edouard to a certain extent didn't really do anything when he came on, so I quite understand the reason why he wasn't brought on at the beginning. Him or Mateta haven't really hit the ground running this season. They haven't really shown any reason why they would be the first pick of the team or anything like that. So it is a disappointment. And of course the goal, which was eventually a penalty that was awarded against us, Elise, he isn't a defender. That isn't his job. He doesn't, that's not his natural ability, is not to defend, and so he made a mistake. And I think that's going to happen when you have players tracking back who aren't necessarily natural defenders. They're going to make mistakes, and he made a mistake, and obviously it was a penalty, and Haaland scored it, which is one of those things. I think if it hadn't been a penalty, I think we probably would have got a point from the game. But it's one of those things where it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a rout. I thought it might be the perfect storm where we play badly, Man City play well, and then we just get trounced. It wasn't like that, and I think the team as a whole worked very hard, but we just don't have the outlet. We don't have the emphasis to go forward anymore, which I think is something which lacks from our game now. Will it turn around? Will Patrick Vieira be able to turn it around? I really don't know. I really don't know. Managers have tried to change the way that Palace play in the past, and it hasn't worked out. And every time I wished it would happen, and I think last season we saw touches of it happening, but this season it hasn't worked out that way, and it's a very disappointing thing to see. Hopefully it will eventually get resolved, but I don't think it's going to happen until the summer. I don't think it's going to happen until more personnel come in. I really don't, because I just don't see how it's going to be transformed into a team that can suddenly start attacking and scoring goals. But anyway, that's my thoughts on the whole game. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the game, what you thought about it, and what you think Patrick Vieira could do differently for the next games coming up. We've got some very tough games coming up. We've got Brighton, and we've got Arsenal coming up as well, so we've got some very tough games coming. So hopefully we need to get some points from those two games. If we don't, we're going to be in real serious trouble. So we'll have to hope and cross our fingers for that. Let me know in the comments as always what you think, and don't forget to subscribe for more.